This week I've got the C8 Corvette Stingray, but that's not really what this video is about. It's about home and how well this two-door sports car with nearly supercar power can get me there. I'm going to take this Corvette on a 1,600-mile round-trip adventure to Chicago, so let's see if both myself and the car can make it back in one piece. Let's do it. So this is my first time coming home in nearly 6 months, which is the longest period of time I've ever been away in my life. I moved to Jersey from Chicago in the fall because I got an opportunity to work with a pretty successful YouTube channel that you may have heard of. So I'm going to be spending this entire trip sort of mentally preparing myself to go back to everything that I basically left behind. So last year, within a 2-month span, my parents split after being together for nearly all my life. My brother, who I'd been rooming with for nearly 5 years, left Chicago to go to New York. My relationship of 3 years ended, and I dropped out of school. So by the time I got ready to leave, my idea of normal or home had been completely turned inside out, like a few times. Change is always imminent in life. It's bound to happen to you in one way or another. And while I left Chicago to seek out an amazing opportunity that only a handful of people in the world have gotten, a part of me feels like I left because I was lost. At a certain point, I didn't really know what to do anymore. So when the opportunity came, I just ran. But things aren't so bad now. Between this kind of stuff and all of the new elements in my life, I'm doing well. But enough with the sappy shit. I've got a lot of driving to do, and I should probably talk about what it's like driving an American supercar across the country. But first things first, cold start. Well, it's not that cold, but you know. All right, time to fuel up. All right, so 10 gallons, 44 bucks. Let's see how long it takes before we have to fuel up again. I think what makes this car the most interesting to me is how much you're getting for the money. To me, this is essentially Chevy trying to make a budget Ferrari that's good to drive every day. And Stingrays can be had for well under 75 grand. And for that price, you're getting a lot of car. This Stingray's basically got 500 horsepower, an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission, and a chassis that's composed of both aluminum and some carbon fiber. So on paper, it's essentially equivalent to a top 5 supercar from about 7 to 8 years ago, but it's worth a fraction of the price. In fact, it's worth significantly less than what those older supercars are likely worth today. And so I've really been itching to figure out where the corners are being cut here, because the idea that you can get that kind of package for this price point feels almost too good to be true. If you want to say any corners are being cut here, I guess you would say that starts with the interior compared to, you know, a supercar, right? The interior in this car is definitely a step up from Corvettes in the past, as any sequel should be, but I'd say it's classic GM in the sense that there are definitely specific elements of the car that you can tell it's not the most premium experience you can get out there. If you saw my CT5V Blackwing review, another super fast blue GM car that I had my hands on recently, you would know that the turn signal stock was one of the cheapest feeling turn signal stocks I'd ever experienced in a car. And we've basically got the same one in here. It doesn't feel as mushy and sluggish to do turns in as it did in the CT5V Blackwing, but it definitely doesn't feel great. Just another example of how, you know, corners are being cut in specific areas, and sometimes GM is just going to be like, instead of coming up with something nice and new, they're just gonna grab from the old GM parts bin and throw it in whatever car they're working on. So I will say that I kind of expect this to be a lot bigger on the inside, to have a more Grand Toury feel, similar to like a Lexus LC500 or a BMW 8 Series, but it's definitely a very tight cabin in here. It definitely gives you the sports car feel, which I like. It might not be for the bigger guy necessarily, but I'm rocking with it personally. We've got the 3LT package, so we've nearly got all the nice interior options that you can get. You've got carbon fiber trim, we've got leather all over the interior, In terms of overall buttons and controls, outside of the turn signal stock, everything in here feels pretty good. There's nothing in here outside of like the turn signal stock, like I said, that feels just like really cheap for how much you're paying for this car, but all of the AC controls feel nice. Everything feels on par with what you would get in like a $60,000-$70,000 luxury car, like an Audi, BMW, certain Mercedes, etc. As a sports car, the steering wheel is definitely a very important element, and we've got like this, I don't know what you call this, I guess a squircle? I'm not sure exactly what this shape is. It's not exactly a square, but it's not completely round either. It's definitely weird. But I've gotten used to it. It hasn't been a problem for me as far as getting used to driving this thing with a steering wheel of this kind of shape. And there's a few things that I've had to get used to, like the little buttons you press here to open the doors. I was expecting there to be a standard just like pull lever inside here. You have to push a little button. And I've already had some passengers in here already, and they've had some trouble figuring out how to get out of the car without me showing them how. So there's definitely a small tutorial required as far as just like learning this car. It's not going to be something you hop in and just immediately know what to do. It even took me a minute to figure out where the hazard light button is. It's up here next to the rear view mirror. I've already been driving this thing for about 2.5 hours, nearly 3, and I'm pretty comfortable. These GT2 bucket style seats are pretty sick in terms of the way they look, and they feel nice as well. I'd say definitely a step up in terms of comfort from the CT5e Blackwing that I drove a few weeks ago. I think I could definitely be okay doing the rest of the journey in these seats without any major discomfort. We've obviously got the articulation buttons on the side here that allow me to adjust bolstering and the tilt, height, all of that fun stuff, so they're not just fixed buckets that you can't do anything with. We've of course also got heated and cooled functionality for the seats as well. So you've got all the luxury amenities that you'd want for doing a long distance road trip. My elbow hasn't been the most comfortable resting on this little center console storage area here, but it's not terrible. And I'd say for a dedicated sports car, which is essentially what this is, I think they did a pretty good job of allowing you to be very comfortable for long distance drives, because that's essentially what I'm using this for, a drive halfway across the country. So comfort is going to be a very big factor for me when testing out this car. Of course, the sound system is going to be an important element of the experience as well, because there's no way I could just drive for 10 hours in complete silence. I gotta have some tunes, of course. And we've got this Bose sound system in here that sounds pretty good. It gets very loud. That's the first thing I've noticed. It gets very, very loud, even around 30%. I'm like, dang, this thing is booming. So this is definitely not something you want to have on 100%. You will go deaf for sure. You will blow your ears out. But in terms of pure sound quality, I'm a fan. It hasn't really blown me away. I'd say the bass response is really good. I haven't been in any of the other Corvettes, the C7s and C6s, in a while, so I can't really say how much better this sound system is compared to the previous generation, but I'd say it's definitely suitable for the road trip compared to cars I've driven, like the Toyota Supra that kind of had a subpar audio system, if you ask me. The JBL speakers in there weren't exactly the best. I'd give it like a solid 7.5 out of 10. And ride comfort. What is the overall ride comfort like? Well, we've been in the tour mode for essentially the majority of the drive. Before going on this journey, just driving around in Jersey yesterday, I had it in sport mode the whole time, and it feels definitely firm. You can feel bumps and stuff like that. And on uneven surfaces, it definitely feels a little sketch. At certain points, you almost feel like there's something wrong with the car because of how just like rockety things are. But in tour mode, it's pretty smooth, generally speaking. Right now, we're on some very smooth roads, and it's very flush. The car doesn't feel super stiff. It has nice suspension, I'd say, overall for handling long distance road trips and experiencing a variety of different kinds of terrain. This is a great combination of being a sports car when you want it. We're in manual mode right now, so just blip on the DCT and then you're gone, you know? But then when you want to just chill and be in, you know, grand touring mode, like I said, it's still a pretty tight cabin in here, but the overall ride experience and all the software related amenities that you have in here to accompany you on the drive, I'd say it's very sufficient. Of course, with this being a mid-engine, almost supercar, the visibility in here is not the best, but I'd say it's good enough for making sure there aren't any, you know, cops, you know, on your rear end or anything like that. I will say looking out the back mirror is kind of weird sometimes, just because you get a reflection of the engine bay and a reflection of the Apple CarPlay display up here. So it can be kind of distracting looking through the rear view mirror sometimes, because it's not just a straight up look out the back. You have all these reflections kind of interfering with your view, which is a little annoying, but it's definitely livable. And all you have to do is flip a switch right here, and then you've got a completely digital mirror that transforms the experience. I would still prefer a physical mirror just to have a realistic view of what is actually behind me. But yeah, at least you have that option. So the overall driving experience for the sporty side of things. This car is not slow. It's not the fastest car I've driven by any means, but I'm a big fan of the throttle response. One thing you just have to know is that unlike that supercharged CT5V Blackwing, this car feels very dead. Really 7th through 8th or 6th through 8th gear, the car feels pretty dead. You're not gonna really go anywhere very fast if you get on it in the higher gears. Like right now I'm in 8th gear, I'm gonna floor it, and yeah, it's nothing. It's completely dead. But once you go down into like 5th gear, then you can start having some fun, doing some nice pulls. So I'd say it's definitely not a supercar in terms of pure performance, just because of how dead it feels in the higher gears. But once you're in like 4th through 1st, obviously it goes for sure. I've yet to do any launch controls, but I'm probably gonna do that once I get to Chicago, where I'm more familiar in the roads. But yeah, it's a quick car. I mean, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds on paper. Of course, in, you know, relatively ideal conditions, you're not going to get that in the wet or anything like that. But this is a fast car. I'd say for spending 60 grand, anyone should be satisfied. Obviously, you're probably going to spend a bit more if you're getting the 3LT package, which is what we've got here. But it's a fast car. It's definitely a fast car. It's not slow. And although it's fast, I will say it's not a scary car. Even when just like flooring it from 1st gear, it'll definitely give you the rush, the excitement, but nothing really about this car scares me, kind of like how that CT5V Blackwing did. Sorry, I keep referencing the CT5V Blackwing just because not only that's another LT V8 powered car, but just because I love it so much. But overall, really solid performance, just not a supercar, you know? Like I mentioned earlier, this is going to be the longest I've ever gone without being in Chicago. This is the first time I've like truly moved away from the state of Illinois for the first time in my life. So I'm so curious to see how things are going to change, or how things have changed. Also, I am excited to just see all my friends that I haven't seen in months. You know, it's been a hot minute since I've seen a lot of people that I grew up with and met in college and all that fun stuff. It's going to be really great just catching up with everybody and just seeing faces I haven't seen in a long time. You know, in Jersey, you know, I've managed to make some friends out here and there, and at least through working at the studio, I have a solid amount of human interaction on a day-to-day basis. But it can be isolating sometimes, especially when focusing on this sort of stuff all the time. Like, really, even if I wanted to, like, because I'm in pursuit of this stuff, I don't have like just that much free time, quite honestly. Like I'm at the studio usually most of the week, and then whenever I'm not there, I'm just doing this sort of stuff, filming cars. So my time is very limited, to say the least. I don't have a lot of free time. And yeah, I think sometimes just taking breaks is great, not only for my mental well-being, but just to get social interaction and stuff like that, and really be refreshed and not feel burnt out on constantly making content all the time. We've got about a little less than a half tank left. We are filling up in the great state of Ohio. So far so good. We've got about like 350 miles left, I think. And let's see how this goes, you know? I think this should be the last time I have to fill up on this trip. I get nearly 400 miles on a full charge. I said charge like this is electric. I get nearly 400 miles on a full tank, so this should be my last fill up at the stop, which means it only takes me about 2 tanks to get to Chicago from Jersey, basically. 2 full tanks. So not bad. Looks like we're done. 50 bucks, basically, for another 11 gallons, and let's get the show back on the road. I think it's time we put this bad boy in sport mode. We've had it in touring for pretty much the whole drive. I want to hear the engine a little bit more. I don't know how apparent it is, like how quickly this car shifts, but man, shout out to the boys at Tremec for developing an awesome dual clutch transmission for this car, or rather Chevy for deciding to use it in this car. The DCT in this car is very smooth. A part of me feels like I would like to feel the shifts just a little bit more, but as far as pure speed and responsiveness, I'm a really big fan personally. And one of my favorite features is very similar to what you'd find in like a Lamborghini Huracan or Aventador. You pull both paddles at once and you can free rev like this, see? And it doesn't disrupt the gearing in any way. You can, so right now I'm in 6th gear, I pull both paddles and it just stays in 6th gear after I let go of both paddles. It's really awesome feature. The transmission in this car is dope. But yeah, that's probably my favorite part of the driving experience of the car, outside of just how quick it is. The sound is good. It's not great, it's good. There is a bit of pumped in audio through the speakers, so it is nice to be able to kind of roll the windows down and actually hear the exhaust for real. We actually have the performance exhaust on this car, so that allows you to get a bit more sound. But I'm sure with an aftermarket system, this thing would be really, really gnarly. You do get these nice little whip cracks on upshifts and downshifts when you're in sport mode. Sound is good for sure, but really the transmission is what shines in my opinion. It's really, really good. But we're at barely over 300 miles left in our journey. We are almost there. I mean, it's still going to be about like 4 hours and some change, but we're almost there. And so far this car has been great. I've had no issues. It's been very reliable and it's been very enjoyable. I think this is honestly one of the better grand touring cars you can get. I think the best way to describe this car is a grand tourer with a very sporty edge. Overall, this is not really a supercar. It has the supercar looks. It has some supercar features, especially with the transmission. This being a mid-engine setup definitely helps in the more performance areas. The handling has been great. I've gone around a fair amount of twisty roads, not super tight, but a fair amount of like windy, curvy roads, and I've just been able to float and glide at around, 100 miles an hour in Mexico, of course. It's been great. Let's say you're coming to this from like a C6 generation Corvette of any trim. I guess mine is probably the ZR1, but let's say a regular C6 Stingray, Grand Sport, whatever, or a C6 Z06. I think you'll be pleased with the performance, but like I said, it's just not really a supercar. I'm going to be in Chicago for nearly a week, and I would manage to fit enough stuff in the car to last me for that amount of time. I'd say that's a W in the practicality factor, and in some cases, that almost makes this even less of a supercar just because of how practical it is. I feel like it makes sense to end this video here because this is basically the exact spot where I got a text message that altered the course of my career and really my life. But I enjoyed my time with the Corvette driving over here. It was a very long drive, one that I'm gonna have to do again in basically a few days, but it's fun, it's exciting, it's comfortable to drive in long distances, and it's one of those cars that kind of reminded me why I like doing this stuff in the first place. But I'm home now, so that's basically about it for this one. If you enjoyed, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for future content like this. Also, merch. Alrighty, that's it. I'm gonna try my best to fully absorb the environment for the short time that I'm here, because no matter where I end up in the future, this is home. Thanks for watching.